In the far reaches of the galaxy, where stars shone like tiny beacons in a vast dark sky, a strange and terrible threat began to emerge. The peaceful worlds that had known only trade, exploration, and quiet lives were suddenly caught off guard. In the midst of a calm space, a mighty empire was taking shape, a force built on power, fear, and the promise of control. At first, the signs were small and barely noticed. In a small outpost orbiting a blue-green planet, engineers and scientists recorded unusual energy readings. They saw nothing clearly dangerous, only a strange shimmer in the dark of space. The scientists spoke in hushed tones, wondering if it was a natural occurrence or something man-made. Yet even as they debated far away, the threat was growing stronger. Across the galaxy, powerful ships moved silently in the black void. One such ship was different from all others. It was large, dark, and filled with hidden weapons. This warship carried the emblem of a rising empire, a symbol that was both beautiful and terrifying. With every pulse of its engines, the warship left a trail of light behind, marking its journey as it cut through the silence of space. It was the first sign that a new order was coming. On the bridge of a nearby command cruiser, Captain Ryland stared at the holographic display. His eyes widened as he saw the warship approach. "Something is wrong," he said softly, his voice filled with both worry and awe. The warship's arrival was like a dark storm cloud approaching a bright, clear day. Everyone on the bridge felt the chill of fear as they realized that this was no ordinary vessel. It was a herald of change, a sign that an empire was being born. Far from the cruiser, on the surface of a small moon, people went about their daily lives. They looked up at the sky and marveled at the distant stars, unaware that their fate was being sealed by events far away. Farmers tended to their crops, merchants sold their goods in busy markets, and children played under the soft glow of artificial lights. Life was simple and happy until the sky began to change. Slowly, the dark shape of the warship grew larger in the heavens. It moved with a purpose, as if guided by a strong will that cared nothing for the small lives below. The ship's presence brought an eerie silence to the space around it. Communications between distant planets flickered and died as if the very air was filled with a heavy, oppressive force. Rumors began to spread among the people, whispers of an empire that sought to rule the galaxy. Captain Ryland, now standing on the command deck of his cruiser, ordered his crew to prepare for a full scan of the approaching threat. The officers worked quickly and efficiently, their fingers flying over control panels as they gathered data. The scans confirmed what they had feared. The warship was not alone. More ships were emerging from the shadows, each bearing the same dark emblem. The rising empire was not a single vessel but an armada, and it was moving in a single, unstoppable direction. The captain's mind raced as he considered his options. His duty was to protect his people and the freedom they had long enjoyed. The idea of a powerful empire imposing its rule over countless worlds was unacceptable. "We must warn the others," he said, his voice strong and determined. "Let every corner of the galaxy know that we will not submit to fear." On the ground, in a busy control room filled with anxious voices, technicians relayed the news to stations across the stars. The message was clear. A deadly warship had been seen, and with it came the promise of an empire that would change everything. The people began to realize that their simple, peaceful lives were at risk. They listened with bated breath, hoping that the heroes of the galaxy would rise to challenge this new threat. The warship, now clearly visible against the dark backdrop of space, moved closer to the inhabited worlds. Its massive structure was designed not only for battle, but also to inspire terror. The ship's engines roared like a mighty beast as it passed over star systems, leaving a trail of uncertainty and dread in its wake. Every light that vanished in its path seemed to carry the silent promise of destruction. As the warship drew near, Captain Ryland and his crew braced themselves for the conflict ahead. They had never seen anything like this before, a force so vast and relentless that it seemed unstoppable. But even as fear gripped the hearts of many, hope burned brightly in the eyes of those who believed in the strength of humanity. They knew that every empire, no matter how powerful, had its vulnerabilities. And in those vulnerabilities lay the chance for a great escape or a brave counterattack. As the stars shone brightly above, the scene was set for an epic struggle. The rising empire might have unleashed its deadly warship, but humanity's collective voice now echoed across the universe. With hope as their shield and unity as their sword, the free peoples of the galaxy prepared for the battle that would decide the future of all they held dear. Captain Ryland stood on the bridge of his command cruiser, staring at the flickering holographic map. The enemy armada, a swarm of dark warships, moved in precise formation across the galaxy. Ryland knew that a head-on battle would mean certain doom for his people. Instead, he gathered his top officers to plan a bold strategy, one that could give humanity a chance to escape and fight back. In the center of the room, the hologram glowed softly. Admiral Cato pointed to a thin line drawn between several star systems. "There is a narrow route," he explained. "It is dangerous and full of space debris, but the enemy sensors are weak here. We can use this gap to slip away." The officers leaned in, their eyes fixed on the route. They understood that the plan was risky, but hope was their only guide in this dark hour. Captain Ryland listened carefully. "We must work together," he said. "Every ship, every fighter, every technician has a part to play." The plan was clear. A small fleet of fast ships would create a diversion, while the larger population took the secret route to safety. It was a plan built on trust, courage, and the determination to preserve freedom at any cost. Across the galaxy, in a hidden base on a rocky moon, a small group of pilots prepared their ships for the mission. Among them was Joran, the humble farmer who had once pledged to defend his home. He now stood proudly beside his nimble fighter, checking every system. His hands trembled with both fear and excitement as he thought of the task ahead. Along with him, a group of young pilots practiced maneuvers in zero gravity, their voices light with hope despite the heavy air of uncertainty. On the command cruiser, Commander Leela coordinated with engineers and technicians to ready the fleet. Every screen and every control panel was set to detect the slightest sign of enemy movement. The officers communicated with each other in clear, simple commands. "Alpha Team, hold position," one officer said. "Bravo Team, prepare to engage if needed." Their voices were steady, a sign of the strength they drew from their shared purpose. The plan also involved a daring decoy operation. A select group of ships would pretend to join the enemy armada. Their goal was to mislead the enemy commanders into thinking that the entire fleet was ready for a direct fight. In truth, these ships were there only to create confusion and buy time for the escape. The decoy group, led by a seasoned veteran named Sergeant Mara, was briefed on their role. "Remember," Mara said to her team in a quiet, firm tone, "your mission is to distract and delay. We do this together, and we all return home." Her words resonated with the crew, who trusted her experience and determination. As the hours passed, the fleet moved into position. The stars outside the command cruiser's viewports seemed to shimmer with hope and fear. The narrow escape route lay ahead, a twisting path between clusters of asteroids and old satellite debris. Ryland's heart pounded as he watched the enemy armada inch closer. Every second counted. The first wave of decoy ships launched their feint. They boldly broke formation and sped toward the enemy lines. At first, the enemy seemed to fall for the ruse. Their weapons locked onto the decoys, and a flurry of laser fire erupted. The explosions lit up the darkness of space like fireworks. The enemy commanders, convinced that a massive battle was underway, diverted some of their forces away from the escape route. Meanwhile, the main fleet began its careful journey along the narrow passage. The ships moved slowly, their engines humming with quiet determination. Each captain monitored their ship's course with precise care. A stray asteroid or a piece of debris could prove fatal, so the crew relied on constant communication and quick thinking. One officer, checking his instrument panel, said, "Course is clear. Just a few more adjustments." His simple words brought reassurance to his comrades. Inside the command cruiser, Ryland studied every detail of the plan. He remembered the old saying that every empire, no matter how strong, had a weakness. Now, that weakness was the enemy's overconfidence and reliance on brute force. Ryland believed that with careful planning and united effort, his people could outsmart the looming threat. The journey was not without moments of tension. At one point, a sudden burst of static filled the communication lines. Panic began to ripple through one section of the fleet. But quickly, a calm voice from Commander Leela restored order. "Stay focused. We are on track." Her clear instruction helped the crew overcome the temporary disruption. As the fleet continued its cautious progress, a sense of purpose filled every ship. The decoy operation was working, and the escape route was opening up. The enemy's dark armada, though still dangerous, was momentarily confused. In that brief window, the united fleet moved forward, leaving behind the shadow of the warship and the emerging empire. Captain Ryland allowed himself a brief smile. The strategy was not without risk, but every decision had been made with care and the hope of preserving the free spirit of humanity. The journey was just beginning, and the true test of their resolve was still ahead. Yet in that moment, each captain, pilot, and crew member knew that they were part of something greater, a movement to reclaim freedom and fight against oppression. As the ships sailed silently through the narrow path, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The plan was simple, the language of hope was plain, and the spirit of humanity shone through even in the darkest space. The strategy had been set, and the journey toward a safer future had begun. The fleet had moved quietly through the narrow escape route, their hearts heavy with hope and fear. But as they advanced, a dark shadow began to appear on the horizon. The enemy armada, long thought to be deceived by the decoy ships, now reformed. In the distance, the massive warship led the renewed charge. Its dark hull glinted under distant stars, and its weapons charged with a low, menacing hum. The time for hiding had ended. The confrontation was at hand. Captain Ryland stood at the main viewport of his command cruiser, watching the enemy draw near. His eyes were fixed on the growing mass of warships that blocked the path ahead. He knew that the fleet had no choice but to face the enemy directly now. "All hands," he ordered in a calm, steady voice. "Prepare for confrontation. Stay focused and follow your training." His words, though simple, carried the weight of determination and hope. Inside the command cruiser, the crew worked quickly. The screens displayed the enemy formation, and each pilot checked their weapons and shields. The decoy ships had done their part, and now the real fleet had to hold the line. Commander Leela moved among the stations, ensuring every officer was ready. "Remember," she said softly to a young technician, "our strength lies in our unity. We have planned for this moment." The technician nodded, a mix of fear and courage in his eyes. The enemy warship, now close enough to see its dark, foreboding details, led the charge. Its weapons fired bright flashes into the void of space, and a burst of laser fire struck a nearby decoy ship. The explosion was loud in the silence of space, shaking the resolve of everyone on board. The enemy ships advanced in a tight formation, determined to crush the fleet and end the hope of freedom. At the forefront of the fleet, a squadron of agile fighters, including Joran's nimble ship, was ordered to engage. The small fighters darted forward, their engines pulsing with energy as they maneuvered around larger vessels. In a daring move, they flew in close to the enemy warship, dodging laser blasts and returning fire with precise, small bursts. Every hit counted, and every pilot knew that their mission was to create openings for the larger ships behind them. As the battle raged on, the decoy ships played a crucial role. Led by Sergeant Mara, they feinted a retreat, drawing enemy fire away from the main fleet. Mara's calm voice came over the comm system. "Keep the pressure, but do not break formation. Our job is to distract and delay." Her team followed every command, even as enemy lasers scorched the metal of their ships. The decoys burned bright in the darkness for a short time before they were overwhelmed by the enemy's firepower. Their sacrifice, however, bought precious minutes for the escape route to be used by the rest of the fleet. Back on the command cruiser, Captain Ryland's face grew tense as he saw the enemy warship slow down to target the main fleet directly. "Divert power to shields," he instructed sharply. Officers quickly adjusted the power settings, and the bright blue shields flared to life around the cruiser. The enemy's first volley of lasers collided with the shields, causing them to shimmer and pulse. For a moment, it seemed as if the impact might knock the fleet off course. But the steady hands of the crew and the clear orders from their leaders kept everyone focused. In the midst of the battle, a smaller enemy fighter broke away from the main formation and zoomed towards one of the escape ships. The pilot on board that ship, a seasoned captain named Elias, spotted the danger just in time. With quick thinking, he maneuvered his ship into a defensive position. A short burst of his ship's weapons sent the enemy fighter spinning away into the dark. Such moments of quick action boosted the morale of everyone on board. The battle lines were drawn clearly now. On one side stood the fleet of brave, united humans, fighting for their freedom and way of life. On the other, the relentless armada of the emerging empire, determined to crush all resistance. The enemy warship loomed large at the center of the formation, a symbol of the empire's power and ruthlessness. For a time, the clash of metal and energy filled the void. Lasers crisscrossed the space between the ships, and explosions scattered debris like falling stars. Every moment was filled with danger, and every decision mattered. Captain Ryland kept a steady eye on the unfolding scene, knowing that each act of bravery could change the tide of battle. As the confrontation wore on, the enemy began to show signs of strain. The decoy ship's sacrifice had caused confusion, and the human fighter's relentless assault was slowly forcing the enemy into a tighter formation. The enemy warship, while powerful, was now vulnerable to coordinated attacks. Ryland signaled to his fleet, "Now is our chance. Focus on the warship, break its shield, and open a path for all." His command was simple, direct, and filled with hope. In that moment, a special unit of fighters surged forward, their ships diving towards the enemy warship. With well-aimed shots and coordinated maneuvers, they began to chip away at the warship's defenses. The enemy's response was fierce, but the human spirit was stronger. Each pilot fought with the knowledge that this battle was not just for survival, it was for the future of the entire galaxy. The confrontation reached a peak as both sides fought with all they had. The darkness of space was filled with the light of battle, and every ship played its part. In the chaos of combat, the simple language of bravery and unity shone through. The confrontation was a test of courage and skill, a moment where every decision could lead to victory or defeat. As the enemy warship staggered under the focused attack, Captain Ryland allowed himself a moment of cautious hope. The confrontation was far from over, but the first signs of change were clear. The human fleet, united and resolute, was not going to let the emerging empire take control without a fight. In the heat of battle, when hope and despair danced together, the fleet pushed forward with a renewed determination. The enemy warship, once a symbol of unstoppable power, now shuddered under the relentless attack of the united human forces. Captain Ryland watched from the command deck as every ship, every fighter, and every crew member gave their all in a desperate bid for victory. The tension was so thick that even the steady hum of the cruiser's engines seemed to echo the heartbeat of every soul on board. Just as the human fighters managed to breach the warship's outer shield, a sudden and unexpected twist occurred. From deep within the enemy vessel, a brilliant flash of light erupted. The warship's surface split open as if in two, revealing a hidden core pulsing with energy. The enemy's formation faltered for a moment, and confusion rippled through their ranks. In that brief instant, the human fleet seized the opportunity. They surged forward with a force they had not known they possessed. Joran, the once humble farmer turned daring pilot, led his squadron in a daring dive toward the exposed core. His small fighter darted through the chaos, his hand steady on the controls. "Now is the time," he shouted over the comm system, his voice clear and filled with hope. His fellow pilots echoed his cry, and together they circled the core, launching a barrage of precise laser fire. The impact of their attack sent ripples of energy through the enemy vessel, and the core began to destabilize. But the twist did not end there. As the enemy warship reeled from the unexpected assault, another secret was revealed. Hidden within the dark hull, a group of enemy pilots emerged in small, agile craft. Instead of attacking the human fleet, these pilots turned their ships away from the chaos. They communicated silently with each other through coordinated maneuvers, and then, in an astonishing move, they joined the human side. Their sudden defection left the remaining enemy forces stunned and disoriented. The battle's intensity reached its peak as the enemy warship began to crumble. Explosions rippled along its surface, and pieces of the once mighty vessel broke away and drifted into space. The combined forces of the human fleet and the defecting pilots transformed the tide of battle. What began as a struggle against an overwhelming force was now a fierce fight for freedom, a fight that the human spirit would not let go. Amid the chaos, Sergeant Mara and her decoy team, who had already sacrificed much to distract the enemy, rejoined the fray. Their ships, battered but unyielding, provided additional cover for the human fighters as they pressed their advantage. Mara's voice, steady and confident, resounded across the comm channel. "Our courage has broken their shield. Keep moving forward. Every moment counts." For those on board the command cruiser, every second felt like an eternity. Commander Leela monitored the battle with a mix of pride and anxiety. The defection of enemy pilots had been a gamble, but it was paying off. The human fleet had become a symbol of unity and strength, not only for their own people, but for those who had once been enemies. The battle was no longer a simple clash of power. It had become a turning point in the history of the galaxy. In the midst of the final assault, a new revelation shook both sides. Deep within the destabilizing core, a message emerged, a holographic recording left by the original creators of the warship. It told a story of a long-forgotten alliance between different worlds and a hidden plan to control the galaxy not by force, but by unity and trust. The message declared that the warship was never meant to be a tool of oppression. It was designed to protect a secret, one that could bring peace if used correctly. The revelation sent shockwaves through the enemy ranks. For the defecting pilots, it was a vindication of their decision to stand with humanity. For the remaining enemy forces, it sowed seeds of doubt and fear. Captain Rylan, recognizing the power of this twist, ordered an immediate halt to the attack. "Let us pause," he said, his voice firm but compassionate. "We have uncovered a truth that may change everything. We must secure the core and see what message it bears." With cautious precision, teams from both sides moved in. The once chaotic battlefield quieted to a tense calm as technicians and engineers worked together to decode the holographic message. The message spoke of a time when all beings, human and alien alike, shared the same dream of freedom, of living in a galaxy without fear or tyranny. It called for a new beginning, a chance to unite and build a future together. In that profound moment, the climax of the battle shifted from destruction to revelation. The warship's core, once a symbol of death and terror, became the beacon of hope for a better tomorrow. The alliance between human fighters and the newly defected enemy pilots stood as proof that even the darkest forces could change when met with understanding and unity. As the battle drew to a close, the shattered remnants of the enemy armada drifted away into the void. The human fleet, along with their new allies, now faced the challenging task of rebuilding trust across a scared galaxy. The climax of the confrontation had delivered not only a victory in battle, but also a twist that opened the door to a hopeful future, a future where fear would no longer rule, and where every soul could look to the stars with hope. After the shocking revelations aboard the enemy warship, a new calm fell over the battlefield. The once fierce clash of lasers and explosions slowly gave way to a quiet determination. With the warship's core now secured and its hidden message revealed, both human forces and defecting enemy pilots gathered around the glowing display. They looked at the message, a call for unity, for peace, and for a future where all could live without fear. In that moment, the battle transformed from one of destruction into one of healing and hope. Captain Ryland stepped forward, his face set with a mixture of relief and resolve. "Today, we have shown that even in the darkest hours, hope can be found," he said softly, his voice echoing across the bridge. His words reached the ears of every pilot and crew member in the fleet. They had fought hard, and now it was time to listen to the truth hidden within the warship's core. The message spoke of ancient alliances and a time when different beings had worked together for the common good. It was a promise of a new dawn, a future built on trust rather than fear. On the deck of the command cruiser, Commander Leela worked side by side with defecting enemy technicians. They carefully studied the holographic recording, discussing each word in clear, simple terms. "This message was meant for us all," Leela explained. "It shows that the power of our unity is stronger than any weapon." "This message was meant for us all," Leela explained. "It shows that the power of our unity is stronger than any weapon." The defecting pilots, once enemies, now shared their knowledge of the warship's technology. They revealed that its design was not meant for oppression, but for protection, a truth that had been lost in the ambition of power. Their honest admission began to mend the deep wounds of mistrust that had long divided the galaxy. Across the fleet, the mood shifted. The once chaotic battleground became a space for conversation and cooperation. In one section of the fleet, young pilots and experienced commanders gathered to share stories of loss and hope. They spoke of home, of the families they fought for, and of the dreams that had carried them through the long, dark hours of battle. Joran, the brave former farmer turned pilot, looked out at the gathering stars with a thoughtful expression. He realized that the true enemy was not the warship or the Empire, but the fear that had once held everyone captive. Back on the warship's bridge, a team of human and defecting enemy engineers worked together to dismantle the remaining systems of the vessel. They believed that by deactivating its weapons and breaking its dark command, they could free the warship from its role as an instrument of fear. Surgeon Mara, whose decoy ships had given so much, supervised the process. "We work not as enemies, but as friends," she reminded her team. Her simple words carried great weight, and the engineers nodded in agreement, their faces lit by the soft glow of the control panels. Slowly, one by one, the weapons of the enemy warship powered down. The once ominous hum of its engines faded into silence. In its place, a calm and steady light began to shine from its core, a symbol of the new beginning promised by the ancient message. The enemy fleet, many of whom had fought in the name of conquest, now stood in silence. They had seen the truth, and in that truth, they found a chance to change their path. The human fleet, joined by their new allies, formed a circle around the warship. They exchanged simple words of hope and gratitude, each one a reminder that the future was not set by violence, but by the choices they made together. The silence in space was no longer filled with the threat of war, but with the promise of a shared future. Even the stars above seemed to twinkle with a gentle light, as if celebrating the end of one dark chapter and the start of another. In the days that followed, messages of peace and reconciliation spread quickly across the galaxy. Former enemies met in neutral zones, talking over meals and in quiet meeting rooms. They planned for the rebuilding of worlds that had suffered under the shadow of the Empire. New councils were formed where each planet, station, and colony had a voice. The focus shifted from weapons and power to unity and shared progress. Captain Ryland continued to lead with a calm determination. He traveled from system to system, speaking with leaders and citizens alike. His simple, heartfelt words reminded everyone that every life was valuable, and that together they could build a future where no one lived in fear. "We have learned today that even the greatest forces of darkness can be overcome by our light," he would say. His words resonated deeply, inspiring many to work toward a peaceful tomorrow. Slowly, scars of battle began to heal. The fleet transformed into a symbol of hope, a shining beacon in the vast darkness of space. The warship, once a harbinger of death, was repurposed into a floating monument of unity and remembrance. It served as a reminder of the hard-fought victory over fear and the dawn of a new era. People across the galaxy found strength in its story, and the promise of the ancient message helped them rebuild trust among neighbors who were once strangers. As the fleet sailed toward a new horizon, there was a sense of calm determination in every heart. The long journey of conflict had taught them many lessons, that unity was stronger than division, that hope could overcome even the deepest wounds, and that a new dawn was always possible after the darkest night. In the end, the resolution was not just a victory on the battlefield. It was a victory of the human spirit, a triumph of compassion over hatred, and a promise that the future was bright. In the quiet that followed the great battle, the galaxy began to change. The once feared enemy warship now floated as a silent monument, a reminder of both past terror and new hope. The united fleet, made up of human forces and their once enemy allies, slowly gathered near the warship to mark the start of a new chapter. Captain Ryland stood on the bridge of his command cruiser, gazing at the slowly brightening stars. The battle had ended, but the journey to peace was just beginning. He recalled the bravery of every pilot, every technician, and every crew member who had risked their lives for freedom. His voice, calm yet determined, carried a promise to every corner of the galaxy. Today we have overcome darkness. Now we build a future together, a future of hope, trust, and unity. On a nearby space station, Commander Leela organized a meeting with representatives from every planet and colony. The station's halls, once filled with anxious voices, now buzzed with cautious optimism. Leaders sat around a large table, each sharing their dreams for the future. They spoke of rebuilding communities, restoring lost worlds, and forging bonds that would keep fear at bay. Simple words filled the room: unity, peace, and progress. In that moment, differences melted away, replaced by the shared vision of a new dawn. Across the galaxy, the defector pilots and former enemy technicians worked hand in hand with human engineers. Together, they began to dismantle the old systems of the warship, reprogramming them to serve as a beacon of knowledge and peace. Sergeant Mara, whose decoy ships had sacrificed so much, supervised these efforts. "Let this warship be a symbol," she said softly, "a symbol that even in our darkest times, we can choose a better path." Her words inspired the team, and soon the once deadly vessel was transformed into a floating center for learning and collaboration. In the days that followed, messages of hope and renewal spread quickly through every communication channel. Across busy spaceports and quiet rural outposts, people began to organize celebrations. They remembered the pain of loss and the fear of battle, but they also celebrated the courage that had brought them together. In small gatherings, families and friends shared stories of survival, laughter returning to voices once filled with worry. Joran, the brave pilot who had risen from a humble farmer to a hero of the skies, found himself in the midst of these celebrations. Standing on the deck of his repaired fighter, he looked out at the horizon, where new stars began to shine brighter than before. He remembered the days when fear had held him back and marveled at how far he had come. His heart filled with hope as he realized that his journey was not just about escaping danger, but about creating a future where everyone could live without fear. At the heart of the new alliance, a grand council was formed. Delegates from every world gathered in a large open hall built near the once battle-scarred space station. The council was simple and open, with each member given a chance to speak. They talked about ways to share resources, to teach each other, and to prevent old conflicts from rising again. There was no grand plan or complex language, only honest discussions and clear commitments to work together for a better future. During one council meeting, a wise elder from a distant planet rose to speak. In a soft, measured voice, he said, We have all seen what fear and division can do. Now, we choose to learn from our past. We choose to trust in each other and to build a future where every being is valued. His words echoed in the hall, touching every heart and reminding them of the promise they had made to themselves and to their children. As weeks turned into months, the United Alliance began to show its strength. New trade routes were established, cultural exchanges were held, and the once fractured galaxy began to knit itself together. The Warship, now a symbol of peace, was often visited by people who wanted to learn about the great conflict and how unity had turned the tide. It stood as a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming power, the strength of the human spirit could prevail. Captain Ryland continued his journey, visiting distant worlds to ensure that the new vision was being embraced. His simple words of hope and determination spread far and wide. "We have overcome fear by standing together," he would say, "and together, we can create a future where every voice is heard." His leadership helped mend old wounds and build new bridges among worlds that had once been divided. The transformation was slow, but steady. The scars of battle faded into distant memories, replaced by the promise of tomorrow. The galaxy, once shrouded in fear and uncertainty, now shone with the light of hope and cooperation. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities for growth and understanding. In every small act of kindness, in every decision to work together rather than fight, the spirit of unity lived on. In the end, the journey was not about winning a battle or defeating an enemy. It was about choosing a better way, a way of life built on trust, cooperation, and the belief that a new dawn was always possible.